Cell company has discovered that the cost of processing customer invoices, which means when we record the invoices, is strictly variable within the relevant range. This is the important sentence that you have to take care of it. Okay, no problem. Strictly variable within the relevant range, which means there is no fixed cost. There is no fixed cost. Which one of the following statement concerning the cost, one of the following answers of processing customer invoices is incorrect? I need an incorrect statement. One that is incorrect. Okay. If we are talking about variable cost, we have to take care that the cost goes with production. Whenever you increase the production, the cost will increase. Let's see the first answer. Cost per unit for processing customer invoices will decline. This is the wrong answer. This is the incorrect one that he needs in the question. Because the cost per unit will never decline. How? With the relevant range, within the relevant range, if we are producing 100 units and the cost per unit is $1, the total cost will be 100. And if we produce 200 units and the cost per unit is $1 per unit, the total cost will be 200. It goes with production, as you can see now. Whenever we increase our production, the total cost increase. The total variable costs increases. You can see it now easily. I'll do it now. Let me prepare a good schedule. So, variable costs increases whenever you increase the number of units. Here is the number of units: 100 units, 200 units, 300 units. And the one is the cost per unit that you can see. I'll tell you now in another way in order to be clear. Okay. Here is the number of units. Here is the cost per unit. Here is the total variable cost. The cost per unit remains $1 per unit. Whenever you increase the production 100, 200, 300 units, the cost per unit is the same. Because we are in the relevant range. He mentioned here that we are in the relevant range. The relevant range means that the variable cost will remain at its amount, at its cost, will not change. But because the number of units in the production increases, the total cost will increase, of course. How this is useful to our solution? Before we discuss it, I have to tell you the shape of fixed cost. If we produces 100 units, let's imagine that the total fixed cost, which is not in the question, the total fixed cost, for example, is 3,000. And it will remain the same because it is a fixed cost. It will not change with the increase in the production. How can we calculate cost per unit? We can calculate cost per unit by dividing the total cost divided by the number of units here. So, if we divide 3,000 divided by 100 units, it will be equal to $30 per unit. And here you can see it, 3,000 divided by 100 equal 30. But 3,000 divided by 200 units, it will be equal $15 per unit. And also 3,000 divided by 300 units will be equal to $10. You can now see that the cost per unit declines from $30 per unit to 15 and then to 10. So whenever he is telling us that the cost per unit declines, he is talking about fixed cost, not variable cost, because the variable cost per unit will not change. The variable cost in the total changes, but per unit does not change. The fixed cost as a total will not change, but per unit it declines. So the cost per unit for processing customer invoice will decline is not correct, because decline is for the fixed cost per unit. And we are talking about strictly variable. So the answer will be A, because he is asking for an incorrect statement. A is incorrect statement. But let us read B, C, and D. B, the total cost for processing customer invoices will increase. It is a correct sentence. The total cost increase, of course, the total cost will increase as mentioned here. As the volume of customer invoices increase, of course, because of the volume increase, the number of units increase. Volume means number of units, so the total variable cost will increase. B is a correct statement, so it is not the solution. The solution, he needs incorrect statement. C, the average cost per unit for processing a customer invoice will equal the incremental cost of processing one more invoice. What does it mean? Average cost per unit. Where is the average cost per unit? Here is the average cost per unit. Average cost per unit is 1 plus 1 plus 1 divided by 3, which will be equal 1. The average cost per unit for processing customer invoice will equal, what will it be equal to? The incremental cost of processing one more invoice. Of course, if we produce 400 units, for example, what will be the cost here? The cost here will be equal to the average that you have calculated before. In the statement C, he is telling us that the cost here, the cost for 400 units, the cost per unit here will be equal to the average. Of course, it will be equal to the average. It will be equal 1. So the total cost will be $400. And the cost per unit here is equal to the average of those three amounts. So answer C is correct, but it is not the solution needed. The cost of processing the 100th customer, the customer number 100, invoice will be the same as the cost of processing the first customer. Of course, the cost of processing any customer, not even the 100th customer of any customer, will be equal 1, because the cost per unit is 1 and it will remain $1 per unit. It will remain because we are in the relevant range, and in the relevant range it means that the cost per unit, the variable cost per unit will be the same and the total fixed cost will be the same. It means that amount will be equal 3,000, the same amount, and the variable cost per unit will be $1, the same amount. So answer D is a correct statement, and it is not the solution because he is asking for the incorrect statement. And answer A is the incorrect statement. Best wishes.